So one of our priority this year, and even a bit last year in our district, was to work a bit more on the mentoring. So we feel like mentoring is an accelerator to learn more for our members, but even for our clubs. And that's why we have now a series of 4 webinars on mentoring. And it was like a project we started last year together with David and another team. And actually, I would like really to introduce you, David, who is walking through the model tonight, and you can ask questions. So David is one of our experienced members. He was division director in Austria last year. By profession, he's a coach, consultant, especially for voice, because he's even an opera singer. So that's why you hear very, very nice voice. And Vienna is the perfect place for him, even if it's not from Vienna, from down under. He's there with the family. And so I leave to David now tonight to bring you a bit inside the project we have developed last year. So as you see, it was part of my HPL project in 2019. So we have a team from all over, let's say, the district, and as well one person from Germany, actually. We created a concept that's called a mentoring academy, and where we, let's say, introduced this idea where we can train, first of all, mentors, and as well how we can introduce the mentoring program effectively in one club. And lately this year, we did a workshop, our winter event in Bulgaria, that David was, let's say, leading. And that brings us really a bit on the topic of tonight, is the introduction of the mentoring model we would like to propose to our district, to our people, so that they can, let's say, play and experience in the clubs. We have 4 different webinars. The first one is developing soft skills. It means because we feel that it's very important for mentors that they develop soft skills. It means they can connect with their mentees. The second webinar is next Sunday. It will be more in depth of what is the model we propose. It's called MTC model, that David will introduce you. Then we will have 2 others in March, and then is about even using this model to improve yourself and your communication style. And the last webinar really, okay, this is a personal level, it's about mentors, but if I want to introduce a mentoring program in a club, what I should do. And that's, of course, is a series. All the webinars, they take place on Zoom, 7 p.m. on the Central European times. We try to run 1 hour, but if there are more, let's say, questions, we can run a bit longer. You can sign up via email, Facebook, etc. And in case you like the first one, you can promote to your members and clubs as well. So here we are. So this is David. I introduced by yourself before, and this is me. So in case you have questions, you can, or you want to, let's say, give us some suggestions, just contact us. And something else, David?
No, that's it. The last slide.
So,
yes.
Exactly.
Introduce yourself, Lorenzo. You're the PQD of District 109 this year, but it was also last year where you were finishing your HPL for your DTM, and you're part of the Italian faction of District 109, let's say, as opposed to Vienna here. You're also an engineer by trade, aren't you? And you're doing your PhD at the moment in Munich. So in terms of processes and understanding, I think the combination of Lorenzo with the rational and the certainly process-driven organization, which his HPL was, with a mixture of maybe the airy-fairy opera guy in me, brings a delightful combination together.
Exactly. But that's, since we are speaking about soft skills tonight, maybe it's your turn.
Yes.
So,
yes.
After
Wonderful.
you.
All right. So I'll take it over. Thank you very much, Lorenzo, for that introduction. And welcome to everybody who's online now and who's just joined us. So as we just said before, as we go through, please ask questions, put them in the chat. That way we can capture that information if we don't get to the question tonight. My hope is that, as you saw before, this academy, this new style, this new model that we propose has come through a series of stages. And by no means is it endorsed by Toastmasters International. It's worth saying that 100% upfront. This is just an alternative for our district that we want to offer all of our district members to really enhance the mentoring experience. Because in our view, at the moment, the mentoring within clubs could be lifted. There could be more even inter-club mentoring. At the moment, I'm mentoring through a program started by Emilia Fossati. She's based in Barcelona in the other district. She asked me to come along as an online mentor to somebody who's in the Barcelona club, a new club. And so I'm mentoring this young, I think we're the same age, but he's a new and a less experienced Toastmaster. And he's somebody who certainly is benefiting from someone with experience. We chat online, we chat on WhatsApp, and we're having a wonderful experience. So we're trying new things that we're also wanting to introduce you to in this model. So as I say, as we go through, we also want to know your thoughts, where you're coming from, so that if you have questions, we can either answer them in subsequent emails and sort of go forward and sort of find some answers. And with the likes of certainly Elizabeth Nostead being online with us too, this is wonderful to have the support of even our regional leaders and international board members and things as well. So I'm very delighted to welcome Elizabeth tonight as well. So I'd like to kick off, because we'll get straight into the guts of why you're here. Developing your soft skills is the idea of tonight. And I want to first present this traditional view of mentoring that perhaps you're familiar with. If you Google image, this was literally a Google image that I obtained at one point. What do you notice about this photo? You might notice the man, an older white man giving a younger white man some kind of mentoring here. And this was one of the pictures we used in our workshop, and it really has, I think, defined one aspect of this traditional mentor idea, that a mentor needs to be old and wise and has been there and done that. And really, if you think about it, is that the most effective way? Because with the change of everything that's happening so quickly now, not only in Toastmasters, but in your lives and in your world, we face a challenge where perhaps this model is a little outdated. You might also notice that in some clubs, in some situations, it's based through power, based through, oh, I'm a mentor, I'm fantastic, yes, I've done 6 speeches and I can mentor you. And you get this kind of power play. I've seen it I belong to 3 different clubs, and I've been the division director of Austria just in the last year. I'm now the immediate past division director, and I really sometimes notice, to my dismay, that people use various positions in a power kind of struggle to really show that, you know, they obviously get something out of it. And I want to challenge that idea as well with what we put forward. I also put forward the Toastmasters view of mentoring. So if you're not aware, there is actually a wonderful manual, and I've reread the manual, and I've read the manual many times before. And the manual is quite good in the sense that it details how to set up a mentoring program. This is in the old legacy program. As I'm still finishing the legacy program myself with 1 speech and 1 workshop to go to be a DTM, my focus has been there. And I know in Pathways, there's also a similar mentoring path, and that's also worth exploring, that people can access as they go along. But what I want to point out here is, again, we have 3 pictures. Which is the biggest picture? And what do we notice about that picture? A man in a pinstripe suit with a red tie, you know, taller than, looking down on, you know, a younger lady here in this case, you know. So I'm a body language guy, and I teach body language here in Vienna. And so it just struck me, oh, wow, you know, I don't know. It's just perhaps, again, something that we want to maybe leave behind. Now, I also speak from the perspective of, I did my master's thesis on mentoring, coaching, and training. And I interviewed several people that looked at what was mentoring back, you know, in the 80s and 90s, and how that has actually now moved towards a new model. And that's partly where I bring this thought for the future for us. Going deeper into the manual on mentoring, as I say, aside from the pictures, if we put those aside, because mentoring can happen in all sorts of different ways, Toastmasters actually lists a number of qualities that could be quite good. They list all of these. qualities of a mentor. You need all of these. Is the kind of the what? It's certainly not the suggestion, but it's all there listed, a whole room of qualities. And on top of that, then you need to, it says, sit with the person, orientate the person in the club to the roles and responsibilities, make them aware of the resources like the magazine, help them with speeches, especially their icebreaker, help initiate them into the club with others, provide feedback and explain officer duties, and so on and so on and so on. So I read this manual and I wondered, and I said to Lorenzo tonight, do we have any statistics? But we don't. You know, why is it that mentoring is not taking off in our clubs? Why is there a little bit of a disconnect? And why are some people really struggling to do that? And I wondered, and maybe there's just too much going on. Maybe you feel like this guy, where the thought of mentoring makes you just go, oh God, you know, why would I do that? You know, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm a parent. I've got multiple things going on. I'm just trying to turn up to speeches and get to the meetings on time. So to mentor somebody on top of that could be a big thing. So I just want you all to take a moment and maybe pop in the chat. Perhaps you could put in here any kind of thoughts around, do you have a mentor within Toastmasters? Let's just take a quick poll for the people who are online here. Do you have a mentor currently? Is that person active with you now? And perhaps if you, no, just that. If you have a mentor, and if there's a mentoring program in your club. Mentor, yes, not active. That's interesting. Yes, yes, and yes. I have for my club role, not for speeches. Okay, for your club role, good. Yes to mentor, yes to mentoring program, good. I'm a mentor, good. I have a mentor as a PQD, yes. Do not have a mentor. So it's a little bit 50-50, established in 2017, but it feels a bit artificial. Yeah. Okay, I'm a mentor, good. I had one, but they left Toastmasters. That can be a problem too, yeah. And I have several mentees, some of them are online, yeah. So it looks like a bit of a 50-50. Some do, some don't, and it's a little bit wishy-washy. And I think that's kind of the point that Lorenzo and I have come up with in trying to help the district to at least work out and see that there could be some other opportunities. So rather than feeling like this guy, I also want to challenge that right now, this is a long list of things. There's a long list in this manual, and I do want to endorse that I think it's a great manual, but we need to deconstruct it. And that's a little bit about what we want to do tonight. Because a lot of these aspects here are great, but they are skills, they are soft skills. So when we consider the World Economic Forum, it's a world leader in research about what are the top skills for 2020, and they've now released the top skills for 2025. What industries should we work in for the future? And as a father of 2 young kids, you know, I'm thinking about what skills do my kids need for the future. Absolutely. And if you have other people around you, definitely. So here's a piece of research I've quoted the bottom there about, and it was from also some LinkedIn research that they've combined LinkedIn with the World Economic Forum. And they show here quite definitively that leadership and communication are essential. In the same article, they point out the top 5 soft skills needed. Now, this was in 2019, not so long ago. We're only just into 2020. And if you look at creativity, persuasion, collaboration, and adaptability, these really are skills that are developed through Toastmasters in a wonderful way. So I think what we do as Toastmasters, of course, is fantastic. And I'm very much an advocate for the leadership training, especially where leaders are made in that sense as well. But let's come to the idea tonight, which is our topic, to developing your soft skills. Now, just in the chat again, when you think of soft skills, what do you think of? So everybody who's on, if you wish to participate, I'm very much interested in an interactive webinar. Maybe write down some of the things you think of when you think of soft skills. I see nobody wants to play just at the moment. Maybe everybody decided to go. If you're not sure what soft skills are, then just write that. People skills, good. I Andreas, yes, you beat me to it. Creativity, the new hard skills. It's like the new black, the must-have. Languages, good. Creativity, communication, work together, global mindset, social skills, relationships. Great. So a nice list there. Excellent. Now, a quick Google search on soft skills. And the first highest ranking article that I got today was this one. The number one entry on soft skills was by thebalancecareers.com. And this was a nice little picture graphic. So some of you said leadership, communication, but positive attitude, work ethic, teamwork, critical thinking. Now, I want to point out that I looked into the article a little bit deeper. And when it came to things like communication skills, there were 12 sub-skills. Critical thinking, 18 sub-skills. Leadership, 21 sub-skills. Positive attitude, 11 sub-skills. Teamwork, 21 sub-skills. And then and work ethic, 28 skills. And then there were an additional 30 skills or values or ideas, soft skills that they mentioned there as well. So if you delve a little bit deeper, yeah, I feel like, you know, you can really get lost in a sea of things here. So tonight, as Andreas said before, I want to point out perhaps what instead of soft skills we call essential skills. Essential skills within the idea of mentoring. But first I want to remind us of our values of Toastmasters. Does anyone know, Elizabeth and Lorenzo, you're not allowed to answer, maybe Andreas as well, you're not allowed to answer straight away, but what are our Toastmasters values for those who are playing at home? Can you think of any Toastmasters values that you know of? Good, Christina, respect, yes. Risto, integrity, yes. Excellence, Ivan, well done. And service, excellent. Thank you, everyone, for playing at home. Well done. So these are essential, of course, but I want to challenge them into a new acronym for you. And I want to see you rise. Rise to the challenge of mentoring, rise to the challenge of incorporating the MTC model that we will introduce just as a sneak peek tonight at the end, and then give to you next week to take back to your clubs. But certainly as a place to start, if we think about essential skills within Toastmasters, they include these 4. But let's go further than that. So combining my own thoughts and Lorenzo's thoughts and the work that we've done already with some information on Google and in life and getting around the place, I've come up with a couple of essential skills that I want to impart to you tonight. So the first 4 I want to impart here that I think are very important in this mentoring idea. So maybe these are things that you're familiar with, but for those who aren't, you know, these are also worth revisiting and perhaps even thinking about, where are you at with these? How much empathy do you have for others? And think particularly as well tonight for your Toastmasters clubs. Are you patient? If the meeting falls apart, if people don't say things the way you think they should be said, are you patient? Do you have compassion for others? So do you actually care for others? And do you wish to help them in that way? Like coming back to before, this old idea of maybe the mentor being a badge, or I know in Toastmasters, we very much enjoy badges and pathways and little ribbons and the kind of competitive nature to some of that. And I've often found that when we get too competitive, perhaps, you know, it's not necessarily as healthy as actually lifting everybody. So competition can be good to lift, but not if it takes away. And perhaps, you know, then trust becomes a bit more of an issue. So these are 4 things that I want to remind us of more than I want to go into. But the others that I want to impart, and we're going to do some exercises tonight, are around these 3. Certainly, well, confidence we won't cover, but I want to develop your confidence through active listening and question asking. Of course, as I said, as we go through, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But active listening. Now, many of us that are Toastmasters, we may already be coaches and trainers, and these may be concepts that you're already well familiar with. But I want to revisit these then, or if you're new to this idea as well, then come to this with fresh ears and think about, really tapping into the resources that you have around you. Not just me, but many, many others. So when it comes to active listening, what are your first thoughts? Pop them in the chat. Again, playing at home. Thank you for playing. If you want to put down what you think of when you think of active listening. Good. Listening, being respectful and empathetic. Listen 80%, talk 20%. Great. Not wanting to share your view right away. Good. Holding back. Speak less, listen more. Paying attention, focus. Showing interest. It's about us. Question technique, yes. Questions to clarify. Good, asking open questions, great. So it is about being in the moment, as has been mentioned. Yes, repeat back and check understanding. Wonderful, great. Speaking to the converted, it gives you a chance to take the information in before you decide what to say. And this is such a critical skill. How often have you felt like just jumping in? I was witness to a Toastmasters meeting the other day where somebody jumped on somebody. It was a new role, a listening post role. It was introduced by this older person, and the person that did the listening post was first-time Toastmaster, first meeting, new member, jumped into a role straight away. And at the end, he delivered what this person thought they were going to do, what they wanted to do. Maybe they had been given just, less of an idea. And this person during the meeting jumped on, no, that's not how you do it. That's not, no. And the person responded, in the moment, well, that's how I do it. That's how I'm doing it now. No. I put in that role and that's not how you do it. And it was very embarrassing. There was no chance, really. This is a side story, but active listening is what that person made of it in that moment. And that person wasn't given a chance. In that sense, before somebody jumped on it in a public way. So even in one-on-one situations, how often have you actually wanted to jump in on somebody? It's worth reflecting on if you're honest. And it happens all the time. We have to stop ourselves. I do it as well. I was talking to somebody on Friday night, and she had come, she wasn't a Toastmaster, but she just came for a chat and to ask some questions. And yeah, I felt myself going, oh God, why are you trying to get one up here? Or why are you trying to say that? Just let that go. And so really deciding to do something different. So it takes skill and patience with yourself. This is where patience becomes a virtue. And as somebody said before, which is wonderful, it's really something that you can focus on, where you focus on the speaker and not on yourself. So where do you think you might be able to develop this? Yes, we do often have to refrain, Christina. That's a great comment. Thank you. We want to refrain from jumping in. And even in a way, when I did my coaching training, refrain from actually having the thought, trying to be as blank as possible and allow that information just to wash over you. Good. So when people are thinking about how to develop active listening, what thoughts do you have? Pop them in the chat. Maybe everyone can see then. How can you develop? I've got some ideas, but again, I want your thoughts because then we can collate everybody's ideas. And that's really the point of a webinar. Good. You can be a speech evaluator. Excellent. And it doesn't have to be within Toastmasters either if you want to or have ways around it. Good. We can ask for feedback on your behavior with others. Good. Obviously, those that you trust too then, Lorenzo, that's important. Read and practice nonviolent communication, definitely. Count to 3 before speaking. Thanks, Lucy. That's great. If you've done if anyone's done any work on emotional intelligence, I do some with an organization called 6 Seconds, and they suggest waiting 6 seconds as the emotion can then, you can then sort of access that emotion too, but certainly wait 3 before speaking. You can develop it with friends. You can listen carefully. Good. Ask open questions. Okay. Good. I've got a few ideas for you, and we're going to do an exercise after that. So perhaps you could do a 5-minute meditation. Now, with apps these days, you can actually get one that's with a Tibetan singing bowl. That sounds silly, but imagine just sitting for 5 minutes, closing your eyes, and you're waiting for that next ding or ding, and you don't know when it's going to come. Ding. Or if you've ever been to, I guess if you have access to a temple or a Tibetan place of worship, then maybe think about, listening for these kinds of things, but putting yourself in an environment where you can absolutely just sit and shut out everything else. So we really want to actually find ways to activate our ears, which after a while, you know what it's like if you get into a monotonous speech, you're listening to a TED talk or something, if the person's always, going on at a certain tone, we start to tune out. So same on the train, same in certain environments, maybe at work, at your workplace. So finding a time to actually focus on that skill, I believe, is important. And you could try that. So get yourself a free app, Tibetan Singing Bowls app. So we heard somebody say before, evaluated speech, yes, but also heighten by listening, by paying close attention to the words of your next speaker or the next person. How often have you heard, when it comes to table topics, we all love table topics, it's one of my favorite parts of Toastmasters. How often have you heard when people going around the room and then somebody, the table topics master says the topic, and then they call someone's name, and the person goes, "Oh, sorry, what? Could you repeat that for me?" I don't know if it happens in your clubs, but it happens in my clubs all the time. Or somebody stands up and they say, "What was the question?" So they go from the moment, thinking about it, standing up, go blank, and then we have to say the question again because they're not paying attention in the meeting of that moment. So it could be that the next Toastmaster speaker is within table topics as well. So you don't have to be a speech evaluator. And I see many people, for instance, in Toastmasters who will write down the topic given by the Toastmaster, the table topics master of the evening for that reason. But they might also write down what the person said. So of course, taking notes could be a way to develop your skill as well as we go along. I put here finally, practicing in a quiet space. So listen to someone in a quiet space. Maybe it's a room, an office where there's no distracting noise. Because you know what it's like when you're in a cafe. Most of the time we have to get out into crowded places, crowded trains, and you're trying to talk to people and you're distracted. So active listening is a skill I believe we can build up slowly by first starting with a quiet space, then increasing and going into places that are more, that are louder and louder until you get to a point where perhaps you realize the skills that you need to develop are already there for you. So these are just some ideas that I have. And as was said before, which is great, I'm glad we have a receptive audience. Forget what you have to say, it's not that important. So that's a good one. How often, when you've said the thing that you were busting to say, did it have the right effect? Did it uplift the person? Did it seem as important as it was 4 seconds ago when you were waiting for that person to finish? Come on, Lorenzo, hurry up, yep. Oh, and sometimes it comes out and you go, yeah, that didn't, or the moment moves on. That happens a lot too. So you're holding on to a thought and then suddenly the moment shifts and you don't even get to say the thing that you thought. So sometimes it's better just to sit back. And I love somebody before said 80% listening, 20% talking. Yeah, and that goes for the talking inside your head. So really being active can really just sit in there and hang on to the words that the speaker is trying to say. I'm a language teacher here in Vienna teaching English, and so often people will think that I am going to help them with the end of their sentence. And I say, no, just finish what you're going to say, because I have honestly no idea sometimes, because the word order might need some help, or I need to fix it in some way, but I don't have the complete sentence because I'm waiting to hear that. So it's a skill that we can exercise in different moments in our work, in our Toastmasters life, but also hopefully you're applying these skills outside of that. I have an exercise for you now. We're going to try that. I'd like you to listen to the following story, okay? So the reason I joined Toastmasters is because my boss made me. He felt like my presentation skills were poor, and he had been to 3 meetings as a guest and decided I should join. He was even willing to pay the membership for 3 years. 3 years? I thought, how long will it take to become a better speaker? I went to my first meeting and I was blown away by the standard. Everyone seemed to be so good. I wasn't sure I would have a chance even after 30 years. I persisted with going to meetings, and this was where I met Simon. He was an advanced Toastmaster, and he told me that he'd been in Toastmasters for 13 years, although he had only intended to come to 3 meetings. He said that he stayed in Toastmasters. The reason he stayed in, he said the reason he stayed in Toastmasters was because of all the interesting people he met from all walks of life. He encouraged me to stick with it and at least aim to deliver 3 speeches. He offered to show me how to take on some of the other roles and really seemed kind. He listened and even said he could see good things in me. It was one of the first times someone planted a seed that I could be a good speaker. I told my boss that I was going to stick with it, and after my 3rd meeting. It was good to be in a supportive community and to know people. So let me ask you, how many times did I say the word 3? Do you think? Have a guess. Lorenzo, you're cheating. You have the slide deck. 4, 10. Okay, 10. Good. Okay, 12, 6, 5, maybe. Let's see. And what was the name of the TM? So Lorenzo, don't spoil it. What was the name of the TM? The person who showed an interest in me, or in this person in this story. Very good. And how long had Simon been a Toastmaster? Great, 13 years. Good. So the answer of the 3s was 5. And I won't go back as it's a long piece of text to read, but it shows you, I mean, that was a trick question in the sense of, we weren't prepared. So the point being, if we did the exercise again, do you think you'd get a better answer? Of course, because we know the questions perhaps, or we know to listen more actively. So this is an example where we want to bring in a sense of, focused listening. So no distractions. If I said, guys, it's time to actively listen, everyone would go, right, okay. Maybe turn their ear a little bit, get right in there. We would really understand. We'd have a desire to actively listen. And so this, for me, is the big turn on, that we need to turn on this point to be active. Now, in a face-to-face environment, you can also see me through the camera. You can look for my non-verbals, my body language, my tone. And of course, as Lorenzo just did, you can also nod. So you can show that I can see that Lorenzo's listening, because at times he's nodding his head or he's smiling. He's showing me signs that he's actually listening in that sense as well. So it's important, if we're dealing with people one-on-one, if we're in a mentoring relationship, of course, to really focus in on that person. We want to respond by listening to their whole message. So this is one of the key points about active listening. If you want to take a quiz, we can send this slide deck out later, but if you want to take a quiz, there's actually a quiz on mindtools.com where you can point out, or you can rate your level of active listening. Very different from just listening, that we want to listen more actively. So when you're in your clubs, let me ask you, do you actively listen? Yes, it's always time to actively listen. Thank you, Lisa. I think being a musician in my life for a period of my life has really helped me to actually, when I'm focused, when I'm present with somebody, especially in a coaching or a training or a voice coaching or a workshop, I aim to be right there with that person. It's why when I hop on public transport in Vienna, I actually love to tune out and I really go, no, I'm not listening now. Most of the time it's because I can't hear or can't understand German high enough. And so it's always then that, whew, I turn around when I hear English, or if I hear an Australian accent on a Viennese train, it's like, whew, bang, suddenly, again, like a distraction, my ears are caught to that. So yeah, it depends on energy, absolutely. So this is a good point, Sam, that you bring, that active listening takes a lot of focus. And I know we know the concept. Everyone was really spot on with their ideas around it as well. But we really need to develop it like a muscle, like a skill, like singing lessons to be a better singer, or being at Toastmasters to be a better speaker and leader. We really want to focus on actually listening. So again, go back to thinking about, like I said before, when can you do it? 5 minutes a day if you need to. Grab a meditation bowl or listen to a piece of music that you particularly listen and love. And listen, maybe if it's classical, for the violin section, or can you hear the woodwind section? Can you hear the percussion? You know, is there something that you haven't heard before? And, you know, re-listening to something over and over, rather than just letting it wash over us, listen for nuances. Sometimes I'm so focused on listening to a piece of music that I'm often surprised when I'm listening to a violinist or a pianist, I can hear their breathing. And it gets to a point where it's like, oh, hang on, was that me or was that? And I realized that in the recording, it's a live recording in the studio. And so that person is breathing. I mean, I knew that all musicians breathe, of course, and they breathe with the music. And it's really interesting when you hear it, or a squeak of the pedal or a certain key in a live concert, for instance, you can actually hear the sounds of people there as well. So mostly I listen for what I'm interested in, which is not active listening. So thank you for your honesty there, Christina. Everyone's seeing that as well in the chat, which is wonderful. So this is the point, you know, often if you're a mentor and you're listening to a mentee, what if they're talking about something that you have no idea about, or you don't care about, or you disagree with? And this is where, of course, our opinions come up, our feelings come up. This is where we need our patience, our empathy, our compassion, our trust. We need to exercise those values and ideas as well, and respect in terms of our Toastmasters value, bringing them together there as well. This is really, for me, quite important that we think about. And it's something that I listen more when I disagree. Lisa, yes, knowing you well, I could imagine that to be true. Definitely. So it's certainly a case of, you know, every situation, every moment is different. And as you said before, we try and do it as best as we can most of the time. So I encourage you, excuse me, to find these moments for yourself and listen on the phone, listen online, listen face to face as well is really important. And of course, when we're listening, as we said, we're trying to receive the information first, and then we want to ask questions. So question asking is another of these values that I think is really important for the mentoring relationship, in sort of also in how we are as people. Now, how often have you heard in your life, why did you do that? What does that speech aim to do? That's not how we do it here in this club. Where did you read that? That's not how we do this. How come you didn't ... and you fill in the blank. So maybe you've heard, maybe there's other questions that you've heard, but what's wrong with these questions? Do you think that I just said? Why did you do that? What does this speech aim to do? Even as what does this speech aim to do? Where I put my vocal inflection changes the answer and the question here. Judgmental. Yeah. That's not, we hear this, yeah, accusing. That's not how we do it here in this club. Like this man that jumped on this poor first time speaker. I was so embarrassed. And I disagreed with him. He should have let the thing be and then approached that person differently at a different time, or even approached him as a mentor and said, hey, you know, I'd like to help you. I'd like to do something different. So I've called these killer questions like killer phrases, like we don't have budget for that. things like killer phrases. Oh, that'll never work is a killer phrase. So killer questions are questions that absolutely make people, thanks Faye, feel unwelcome. It's an accusation and not a real question. Absolutely. We're bringing our judgment. We're bringing our lack of well, our disagreement, and that's fine, but we're not seeing things, and it's negative. Absolutely. So none of these really help. So I believe that too often, perhaps, you know, there may be this, I can't speak for all clubs, but maybe too often, you know, are our clubs becoming less accessible? And is it about, you know, perhaps time to reconsider and allow new influences and ideas in, especially with people? So when it comes to questions, some basic types you're all probably familiar with. But certainly, again, when I did my coaching diploma to be a professional coach, they always talked about yes, no questions. And in language too, yes, no questions. Did you enjoy the lesson? Yes. How was the meeting? Good. How are you today? Fine. Anything that invokes a short answer is not necessarily a great question. But we do have yes and no questions. We have in English, our WH questions. I don't know if in other languages like Italian, Lorenzo, you can help me there. There's similar questions. Maybe they're the D questions, like dove, or where is the da-da-da? What is the da-da-da? Why? As we saw before, why? Why is the nasty one of these ones? Have you ever felt good after being asked a why question? Why did you do that? Why aren't you here? Why are you late? Why is your report not in on time? Why did you speak about that topic? Why questions really come with a whole bag of negativity. Who questions, though, could be different. Where, what, as well. We have closed versus open questions. So for the group, do you know what I mean by a closed question? A closed question really shuts down that conversation. Whereas open questions, what do? It's a bit like gestures. We can have a closed gesture. Good evening, my fellow Toastmasters. Good evening, my fellow Toastmasters. And have an open gesture. Good. So we want to focus on those. And of course, there are rhetorical questions as well. And it may be that in your clubs, you know, these are used as speech vehicles as well. But we want to be kind of certain about where we are with our question types. So think about where you can ask questions. Where do you ask questions in your life currently? So in what moments of your life can you ask, or do you ask questions? Where can you develop your question asking skill? All the time? Yeah. Everywhere? Good. Every moment? This moment now? No one's asked me a question. Let's go into a little bit more detail. Yes, to ask project members, that's good. Yeah, when something is new, this is good, Tim. This is where I'm going. We want to elicit information. Very good, Anastasia. Yeah. So we ask questions, of course, when we don't know. Yes, Lorenzo, when I don't know something. Exactly. Yep, the beginning of the day, good. What is my outcome? Yep, so we ask questions of ourselves and we ask questions of others. When there is a change, great. When I do not fear to embarrass myself. Yeah, that's true, Andreas. That's a good point. So sometimes when we are feeling like, you know, we don't want to ask because, oh, I might, you know, if we're at a conference, maybe we don't put our hand up and ask a question at the Toastmasters. You know, during the, I'm sure we all love, Lorenzo, you're going to have one coming soon, the district council meeting. Who wants to ask a question in a district council meeting? No one, because that would be embarrassing, Andreas, especially if it takes too much time for the meeting. We've all been there and done that. But to start a motion, yes. And when I'd like to stimulate deeper thought or conversation, thank you, Lisa, yes. And to second something, exactly, Sarah. So we can always confirm and deny, but where I'm going with this is that if we're in the mentoring relationship with somebody, or if we're within a club environment, finding ways to ask good questions. And think about the poor questions that maybe you've had in your life. and maybe you hear constantly. As I said before, what are the results that we get? Negativity we had. We had a lack of empathy, understanding, maybe no compassion, not the result that we want. So have you ever tried to ask a question? So Lorenzo, what are you saying here? District conference. Okay. Do you want to join? Practice asking questions. Yes. Would you like to come? Have you heard the conference is on? Those loaded questions. Well, yeah, those are definitely poor questions when there's a loading behind that. And this is what we have to, I think, be careful of as mentors. If we're going to assume a kind of mentor figure to somebody, and we'll explain more about the model where we challenge those ideas, but if we're seen as a mentor, if we're in our clubs in a mentoring relationship, then we have to be careful of those loaded questions. Did you really think that that was a good idea to talk about that? You know, we're offering our opinion through the question, and that's definitely for me a poor question, because ultimately I think we want to, well, we need to be aware of what effect does asking the question have on the respondent. How is that person really going to react? And this is where the power differential comes in my opinion, where with the wrong questions we just come off seeming like we know it all, or that we're like this fellow that I mentioned before. I know he's a nice guy, but it's not that we have to be so, you know, dogged with the letter of the law. Toastmasters is not going to knock on the door the next day and said, you did the listening post wrong. You know, we are, each club has and creates its own identity, its own shift within the Toastmasters framework, obviously aspiring to the values as well. So we have to be careful of the effect that we think we might have on others. And this is where we tread lightly. So I say here we want to aim for open questions. Open questions. Leave the floor open for the person to answer. And as to avoid the loaded questions, our tone and inflection. Our tone and inflection. And this is where my voice work with people comes in, that when we change, even if I took the questions from before, why did you do that? Why did you do that? You know, any tone and inflection in any language changes the meaning there as well. So it's always worth reflecting. Somebody before mentioned the mirror, which I think is great. Other people are a mirror for the questions that we ask in our lives. This is really important. I work with a mentor in Australia who's not a Toastmasters, nothing to do with Toastmasters, but he's a healer and a mentor to me. And he often talks about the mirror, and everybody's mirroring what we're putting out all the time. So if we're putting out poor questions, we're going to get that feedback from people. If we're putting out loaded questions, it's going to come back to us in that way as well. Whereas if we're putting out open questions, seeking feedback and actively listening within a space of empathy, trust, confidence, then and compassion and patience, just be patient with somebody, then I think we're able to do that. We want to be careful here, as I say, of why questions. Really avoid why. It's one of the biggest things that I learned as a coach, and I would encourage you to do the same thing as well. Now, as you're all actively listening now, I'm going to read another dialogue. I'll put my best radio voice on for you. And I want you just to listen to the types of questions, or listen to the interaction between two people. So I haven't really got well, there's two people, but yeah, I'll just read and see what you think. So, are you enjoying the Toastmasters meeting tonight? Ah, I am indeed. The table topic session was so good. Everyone came up with really good answers. Who was your favorite speaker? Oh, I thought Frank was a standout. He really seemed to flow with his answer. Yes, he did. I mean, what do you mean by flow? Well, he just knew like what to say at just the right moment. It seemed like he had rehearsed and prepared the topic. True. Is that something that you're aiming to do? Sure, but I think it's going to take a lot of practice. I don't think I could ever be as good as Frank. Not necessarily. You know, Frank started and felt the same way you did a few years ago. He consistently came to meetings, though, and worked on his table topics. He asked a few more experienced members, I believe, for some tips and training, and worked with a few people to finally settle in and to develop his own style. He just didn't copy, but he really evaluated his performance and got regular feedback from a few trusted mentors. Wow, that sounds amazing. Would you be able to help me in a similar way? Sure, it would be my pleasure. Perhaps we could meet before our next meeting and see what ideas that I could share with you. I believe what I said before and see that you can also be like Frank. It would be my pleasure to help you. So what did you notice about that conversation? Hopefully it was clear in my reading of it, not too fast, not too slow. Anything that popped out? Again, feedback for me. Lorenzo, you look pensive there. It flowed, yes, it flowed between the two people. Great. Yes, thank you. That's where I was going. Good. Questions move the ideas along. Yep, very smooth and warm. Mentor leading the new person into finding. Thank you, Christina. Yes. So this was not even an official mentoring relationship. Very supportive style of communication. It was friendly, peppered with positivity and encouragement. Thank you. I'm glad that you all understood that when I wrote this morning, because yeah, thinking about this kind of ideal conversation where it's not a push or a position, it's not a but it's really just a subtle use of questioning. What did you like, and how did that feel, and what do you mean by flow? So we want to get that person's interpretation, whether they're new, old, experienced or not. It can work both ways there as well. So yeah, that's super. And I say here that there was active listening by this other person. It was subtle, supportive questions. Now, I put in here holding the person in a positive regard. And I think that's something that we definitely do as Toastmasters. It's worth reminding ourselves of this as well, that we want to hold whoever comes in the door in a positive regard. And even people that maybe we dislike, we need to find the strength to hold in a positive regard. And this is partly confidence within ourselves. I mean, we're all human. We go through a range of emotions. You probably find there are people in your club who you just can't stand the sight of, or other people that you rub up the wrong way and you have no idea why, or you don't seem to have an interaction. But this is where if you can work on yourself, you can hold them in a positive regard. And I like the fact that, yeah, there were no answers given necessarily. We're not providing sort of a straight out answer. Oh, if I were you, you just need to go and do that. Just go do a bit more of that and you'll be fine. You'll be like Frank next week. Yeah. We know it takes time to develop our speaking skills, but also these kinds of relationships. Now, what did you notice too in both of those conversations? The one from before, when we were talking about active listening, and the one from now. I put it in a context of what I call, or we've called, the mentor mindset. So this is really in a way, getting towards the concluding part of our session for tonight in terms of skills. So really, I know we all know what empathy is. We all know compassion. We all know about our values with Toastmasters. But I encourage you to think about, what are you doing to develop your own personality, your own mindset around this as well. And we want to bring that in. So really, I want to point out that it begins with you. You have to develop your own skills first. Now, not only be a top communicator, be a leader, be someone who's there, but if you don't ask good questions, then go ask better questions. Go write down questions. Listen for good questions. If you find yourself not actively listening, find moments to practice that. Everyone said before, all the time, every moment, yeah, questions. But what about just going to the supermarket and having a short conversation with the kassa, with the person at the cashier? That's where I practice my German, and I have to listen, because if I don't, then it just, and so sometimes I have to say, Entschuldigung, I didn't get that. Noch einmal bitte. And then I catch it, and then I have a good conversation. And I have to turn on my ears when I go into a German conversation for that reason. So I know that I'm developing my active listening skill in that moment, and also asking questions at the same time. So again, the mentor mindset begins with you. Develop your skills first. And really, it's a privilege to be a mentor, not a power play. I don't know if you've looked up the background with Telemachus being the mentee to Mentor, who was actually Athena in disguise. So I haven't read Odyssey. Maybe some of you have, and you can fill me in on more of the characters within that. But what's interesting, it struck me this morning, it's for a different conversation, but Athena was in disguise as Mentor, so she was kind of lying. I don't know, it's a bit of a cheat there. So, but what I want to point out here really is that the mentor mindset, I think when we're in the right space for that, is not a power play. It's not about as much as Lorenzo gave me a badge that says mentor, I don't actually wear it very often, Lorenzo, because I've gotten to a point where I actually put my badges away. Unless we're at big events and things, because I think, oh, I'm just here, I'm just doing my thing, and it's an important place to shift from, versus, oh, here's our esteemed, and when people get over the top with that kind of thing, you think, oh, don't put me on a pedestal, because I'm here to serve you and I want to help you to lift here, and I need to actually put myself back into the shoes of perhaps that newer, more inexperienced person. I say here in the mentality idea, don't protect people. So sometimes we think in being a mentor, people don't have to make mistakes. They just do it the way I did it and they'll be DTM within 2 years. Fantastic. Just give them everything that you've got straight up. But that's not necessarily, I think, what good mentoring is about either, or being in this great space. It's not about cocooning people. We know that if any of us, I have children, I've been skiing this weekend with my oldest son. Well, I didn't ski, I took him to ski school. And I don't ski, I'm from Australia. He learned to ski for a few weeks ago. We wanted to reinforce his skills. And he was coming down the hill today and yesterday, and he was hurtling down at such a pace that I started to say, whoa, mate, slow down, and I'm feeling protective of him, of course, as Papa Bear. But at the same time, it struck me that I don't have a skill here that he has. And that I said, just be safe. And as long as you're doing it well, great. And I had to just let him go. I have to let him be and trust that he understands, as he's growing in his confidence in skiing. But I can't protect him. He needs to protect himself. Just as speakers, your mentees need to get up, they need to fail, they need to fall, they need to go through some of the things that you did go through. Now you can also guide and suggest and steer them with good questions and listening, but we don't want to perhaps not throw them to the wolves. They may need to have some interaction and a bit of a battle. If you've ever understood the story of the butterfly, there was a researcher who decided to cut open. The butterfly was struggling to get out of the cocoon, and so the researcher cut open the cocoon a little bit, and the butterfly kind of fell out. Within a week, the butterfly died because the butterfly needed to go through the cocoon and struggle and really do it on its own in order to fully develop its wingspan properly. So if you don't allow the same thing here in this environment, you're not going to allow people to perhaps, really realize for themselves. We can't script write for people. It says in there, help them with their icebreaker, but we don't want to write it for them. Again, we want a serving mentality. I think that's been clear through what I've mentioned tonight there as well. And what we want to introduce you now is this idea that I've said twice in both of the dialogues. I want you to think about planting the seed. And so the mentor could actually be a motivator instead. So we're going to give you a sneak peek now into the model that we want to introduce next week, and we'll go much more in depth. And for those who have been in, who were in the workshop in Bulgaria, you'll know a little bit more about this. So it may be that you want some reinforcement, you want to bring your thoughts about what you've been able to do with the model when you were introduced in Bulgaria, maybe how that's changed some of your thinking. So I would encourage and invite that interaction if you've been able to take this already to some of your clubs. So what I'm talking about here by motivate, by planting seeds, is our model. So we have here the motivator. So instead of having one role like we saw with this big list of qualities and big list of responsibilities to do as the mentor, Lorenzo and I have come up with this idea of breaking it out into these three parts. So just briefly, I see something in you. I have a wonderful 83-year-old Toastmaster in my club who, when he says to me, David, I really see that when I was club president, he came to me several times in my year and he said, David, I really see you growing into this role of president. I'm really impressed. Thank you. Well done. And it meant so much to me. He planted that seed. He said, keep it going. Yes, great. Thank you, Rolf. I will. And on I'd go and I'd continue to absolutely be motivated, but he planted an idea, or he might say, yeah, maybe you should think about this. You know, maybe there were some things in that year that weren't going well. And he'd say, oh, just be aware of that. But he wasn't the sort of person that likewise would I go to get speech advice on my icebreaker. Nor would he be somebody who I'd want to sit down and talk about where I'm going and what I'm doing either. So my point here, or our point here, is that we could have the trainer role as well. That I will show you how to grow. So in the example of, in our dialogue there before, that the person maybe wanted to be like Frank, the great table topic speaker. And so they decided, well, and that person, that mentor, when that mentee decided to take a more training approach to that relationship. Likewise, a coaching relationship. And we're now familiar much more with the coach ideals, the question asking. This is where the question asking skill is most relevant. And we've used the tree analogy again. You plant the seed with the trainer. It's the little shoot that's growing, and the little shoot is growing, and suddenly we're seeing it thrive. But we don't want to overwater it. We don't want to kill it. We need to just help it to continue to rise. And thank you, Faye. My son is going to teach me how to ski for sure in the next years as well. And I want to encourage him to do that. I realize, Dad, just be Dad in this moment. It's not about, I can't train him. I'm not his trainer. I'm just his motivator. I'm the seed for him now. Hey, would you like to go and do that again sometime soon? You were really good. I was a video guy too today, took videos all day so that he could then have that feedback. So coaching is the final section of the model here that's worth mentioning. So in the coach model, we say, let's sit together, discuss your goals and how to achieve that. But if you're familiar with the coaching environment, it's not about telling the mentee or the coachee what to do. It's about asking questions in that. I see something. Did you do that, Lorenzo? I see something in you. Did I do something wrong? Anyway, we've got a green bar around. I see something in you.
Was not me.
It wasn't you. Okay, this was a mystery on the slide here. Okay, let's keep going. Good. So this is our model that we're going to go more into detail next week. Maybe Lorenzo and I will, if he's coming, we will workshop some ideas, maybe break you out into groups, get your feedback as well. But it's something that we feel is very important because when you think of your Toastmasters Club environment, sometimes you have people that are wonderful motivators. Other times you have people who are very good at a specific skill. And if they could put their hand up in the club and say, guys, anyone who wants to be, I'm going to do a great table topics education session next week, or 10 minutes before the meeting, I'm going to warm our voices up, a bit of vocal training. That could be that role. Whereas there might be others in the club, separate people who say, I could be a coach. And what's cool about this model is that we feel that, in fact, whether you are a beginning Toastmaster or a distinguished Toastmaster 2 or 3 times over, you can play a different role to different people. And you can go to different people to receive different things as well. So this is a really cool model that we want to keep going with. So to wrap it up, before the next webinar, if you'd like to join us, we would like to see you next week, same time, same place on Zoom next Sunday night, and we'll put together some more material for you here. I want you to think about where you can ask questions. Again, somebody mentioned the supermarket. Yes, great. I love practicing my language skills at the supermarket. Yep. And we want to also Be aware of your listening. Now, especially in meetings, those of you who said, oh yeah, I listen when I'm interested, or when I like the person, or when I like the topic, otherwise I tune out. So think about where you need to take development, where you need to develop yourself, I should say, and where you want to actually improve your listening. Maybe you've got a Monday morning week in progress meeting. It's a standing meeting. It takes 10 minutes, but you know it's going to take 50 because of John over in the corner. Well, maybe we need to actively listen to John and maybe change and ask him questions that might steer the conversation in a different way. So I'd love to hear from you next week where you've been able to find moments to make this happen. I'd also ask you to think about who are the mentors in your club now. So those of you who do have mentoring, who are the mentors? You know, think of it demographically. If you had to model them in some kind of a graph, if you had to provide information, what could you say about them? And would our new model that we'll go deeper into next week offer something different? If it's not in your club, could it be? So maybe go back, you know, if you type in Toastmasters mentoring manual PDF, you will get the official toastmasters.org website with this PDF. And it actually defines a step-by-step process about how to put mentoring back, or to implement a mentoring program in your club. And I know I had a question from somebody before the session too, where, yeah, she said, well, what do we do about struggling clubs? What do we do about young clubs? And maybe our model could be useful for younger clubs as well to share across the district. And what support do you need? So really think about, in the coming weeks, we want to open a dialogue, Lorenzo and I, certainly Lorenzo as PQD for the remainder of the year, Toastmasters year. I'm sure we'd be happy to hear from Matt. What support do you need to implement mentoring within your club environment, within maybe other clubs, or when you see things that maybe you need and some help on? We are here and want to support you. And finally, don't use why questions. If you've learned nothing else tonight, don't use why questions. They will ruin your life. Whereas when you ask things in different ways, you know, and if anyone is in a partnership with somebody or has been in a partnership, you know, that's especially true with your family. So I'll leave you with a quote. This is from my mentor. So I don't have a Toastmasters mentor at the moment. I never actually had a Toastmasters mentor, believe it or not. I did my first few speeches and somebody said to me, you don't need a mentor. Why are you here? Why do you even bother with Toastmasters? And I've learned a tremendous amount from Toastmasters. And I spoke to my mentor in Australia just last week who said, implement change to change your life. So think about what you need to shift in your mentor mindset in order to create the change in your life, both within yourself to influence your life, but also to influence your Toastmasters and in your clubs. And remembering to rise. So, Lorenzo, back to you.
Thank you very much, David. And let's say, to planting a big seed in you, it was a very nice webinar, as I see in the chat as well. And especially you make very lively, and I enjoy really to listen to your stories and as well participate. So, and I felt most of the participants had as well. So as you said, we will come back next week. In case you have some final questions or remarks now, just ask us, even like that. Otherwise, we just speak next week, and in case you know how to contact us. So have a good night.
Great. Yes, thanks very much, everyone. And we can certainly stand by. Are we going to stop the recording now? Lorenzo?
Trying to stop.
Trying, yes. Let's